Okay, so we'll continue from where we left off in Siman Tzadik Beis, which is Basar B'Cholot, Sif Daled. Sif Daled is a big seif as far as understanding the various shitas in Mechaber, the Ramah, the Shach, and the Taz. It's an important seif because it gives us a better understanding of what's to come. What's to come in the next few seifim, and what's to come also somewhat in Siman Tzadik Daled as well. These are actually situations that occur from time to time, so it pays to be aware of the various possible scenarios, and they all have to do with Hanan. It would appear that Hanan would be something that we wouldn't have to deal with, because Hanan, just means that something has become usher. Okay, so we usually get rid of it, right? But sometimes it could happen that a piece of meat that became usher, a heter that became usher, somehow fell again into another pot. How many mistakes can you make? And sometimes, we learned this in Hilchos Taaruvot, it can make a difference in Niddah Taaruvot or lo Niddah Taaruvot. There are times, if you remember that it could make a difference if something was known the first time it happened versus not having known that it happened. And Mitzvah Hashem, we're going to get into that again. Sometimes lekula and sometimes lechumra, of course. Knowing or not knowing, whether it makes a difference or not. Hanan brings about a situation where now we're not concerned only with the Isser, the original Isser, we're concerned with the whole piece. Okay, we're concerned with the whole piece, but does that make a difference if that piece is a solid piece? What if it's not a solid piece? What if we're dealing with liquids only? Right, lach belach. And we will see various scenarios where this can come up. It comes up in the industry too, in the industry of winemaking. Yain nesach, even though today you may not have yain nesach, you have what's called stam yainam. We're machmir on the mixtures of those isurim as well, even though they're derabanan. Do we apply Hanan to liquids too? Okay, you following? In other words, this concept of Hanan, that we now have to concern ourselves with the entire piece that has become Asr, that has absorbed the Isser. Do we say that this concept also applies to liquids, where liquids are mixed? And it doesn't have to be Yain Nesach, it could be Chulin and Truma too. It could be all kinds of situations, and I'm going to give you various examples, and we will see that it's not so simple. There's quite a few machlokesim depending on what's involved. And we will see whether there's something called Hanan be'isur mashehu. Because isur mashehu says, let's take an example of isur mashehu. Davar sheyesh lo matirin. Davar sheyesh lo matirin is not batel afilu be'elef, because we say it's going to be mutter eventually. What is that? An egg that was laid on Yom Tov, right? It's going to be mutter at some point anyway. So right now we do not say that it's batal. So if it's not batal b'mashu, do we say Hanan on an isur mashu? Okay. What else? Do we say Hanan legabe keli, the vessel itself? Can the vessel become Hanan? It absorbed an isur. Does it make the whole keli asur? And the blias in the keli. In other words, besides the keli, what about the blias, the bliot themselves? That which has been absorbed, the taste in the keli. Do we say Hanan on that? So that is some of the things that we need to review, and some of it is mentioned in the Ramah, the rest is mentioned in the various Nosei Kelim, Shach and Taz. We have a Rashba, we have Mordechai, we have a whole bunch of poskim that bring about all kinds of scenarios. And because we determined that everybody, or for the most part, the most poskim hold that Hanan b'shar isurim is asur, and the isur is midirabanan. Okay, that's of course according to those who hold with that shita that it's asur. It's asur, but it's asur midirabanan. Those that hold like Rabbeinu Ephraim say that it's not even asur. There's no such thing as Hanan b'shar isurim. The main idea of Hanan applies to Basar b'chalav only. It's a very unique chidush that we say that the whole combination of the two become a chepsa shel isura. The chepsa shel isura does not apply in any other situation. Okay, so before we go on to see the other scenarios, we did leave off with an important Ramah. Ramah, in elaborating a little bit about more Chanan B'Shar Yisurim, says, wait a minute. It's not so simple, Chanan B'Shar Yisurim. It's on condition that it's an Isur Davuk. An Isur Davuk is, as the post can point out, an additional Chumrah, if anything. Because why is it an additional Chumrah? Because even if you were to say Chanan B'Shar Yisurim does not apply, you may still want to say that this piece is Asur because of Isur Davuk. See, that's not so clear from the Ramah. If you learn the Ramah inside, telling us about the Chanan B'Shar Yisurim applies. We hold like that. But I have conditions for that. It has to be an Isur Davuk. Because a typical Chanan, how does a typical Chanan become a Chanan? Either it was outside the Rotev all along, and it absorbed Isur, and it is by itself, it has no help, so it becomes Asur. There's no shishim against the tipa, the liquid, the Isur. Or it was actually cooked, immersed in Rotev, but there was never shishim connected to Isur to begin with, so that whole piece of heter that was bolea became Asur. Okay? So that is how Chanan became Chanan to begin with. But then we have a question, okay, that piece falls in again, now what do we do? Okay, so we have a machloket, Rabbeinu Tam, Rabbeinu Ephraim, right? But if you don't hold Chanan B'Shar Yisurim, there is still a possibility of something called Isur Davuk, which means that if a particular piece of heter has the Isur to begin with attached to it, it is at a disadvantage.
I don't understand that.
It is at a disadvantage because even though it's sitting with other vast amount of heter, because the Isur is attached to it, and what is an example of an Isur Davuk that is attached from the very start? How do you get an Isur attached to a heter from the very start that it's Davuk? Chaylev. They forgot to tribe off, like we say in Yiddish, to remove a little bit of the chaylev that's still stuck there. So a piece of meat is being cooked and has chaylev attached to it. Oh, it has chaylev attached to it, it's Isur Davuk. And it's, so what if it's in the Roitev? There is an understanding from Rashi. I mean, this is not just a made-up story of the Ramah. And the Meforshim say that it is actually a rayaf that Rashi holds, that there is such a concept, musag kazeh, that which is davuk, or that which is betzido samuch lo, close to it, memaher livloa. In other words, even though it's true that at the end you have all this help in the Kedera to be mevatel the Isur, yeah, but initially it's davuk, initially it's absorbing, and therefore there will be more Isur in that piece. So what if I have shishim connected?
But right now you're a little bit because
I'm veering off from Chanan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without forget Chanan.
It's not necessarily Chanan. The Ramah holds that in such a case you call the piece Chanan.
Yes, but why am I?
It's not always Chanan.
Right. Why am I saying this? Why am I bringing this point up? Because we're going to read right now an interesting Ramah. This Ramah seems to make a compromise. You know, Ramah is into compromises. You know the compromise on Hilchas Mezuzah? There's two shitas. The Mezuzah either has to be vertical or horizontally laid. We don't know. So the Ramah says, let's make a compromise and put it diagonally. That's a compromise. The Sephardim, the Mechaber just says, just leave it standing up. Let's make a compromise. Okay. Obviously, if you put it vertically, it's okay too. Don't put it horizontally. First of all, you may not find that much room on your door frame, especially if you have a big mezuzah. So we put it on a slant. So this Ramah makes in other words, he's pointing out a certain halacha, but when you learn this halacha, you say, wait a minute, where does he get this from? Who does he hold like exactly? It appears though he's making a compromise. In other words, he's holding on to two shitas. But before we read it inside, I explained a little bit what the Isur Davuk is all about. The Isur Davuk just means that there is a situation where a piece of Isur can be attached, and when it's attached, right, it apparently is memaher livloa, according to one way of understanding.
Or the other one is that it would be, in which case, 16
right.
around it
Right.
Versus when
The
you pour it
smag,
out.
right, holds that there's a possibility that that piece became isolated temporarily. Isolated means from the rest of the gero, outside the rotiv, and therefore it can become usher without having all the help of the gero. So this isur davuk means that potentially this piece, regardless of what we say about chanan, will become usher.
It's like an Isser Balua.
Right. Exactly. Very good. Like an isur balua. So now that we understand that a little bit, let's see the Ramah again. So yesh amri. The amrina bechol ha'isurim chaticha naset nevela. Quite a few poskim hold like that. V'chen haminhag pashut ve'en leshanot. That's the way we go. No changes, no allowances. V'davka, here the Ramah says, as far as chanan, he takes this isur davuk and applies it to chanan. V'davka ima isur davuk bechatichas heter. When do I say chanan b'shar isurim? If it's isur davuk bechatichas heter, or shachaticha kulo chutz lo roitev. V'nafar aleh isur. In other words, the Ramah is basically trying to eliminate a situation where it doesn't make it too much more difficult. He's saying it has to be a real chanan. If this piece of meat has no isur davuk to it, and it's only halfway immersed in the water, in other words, it's not completely out, it's not completely in, it's halfway, אבל אם מיקסס החתיכה חוץ תוך הרוטב, ואין האיסור דבק בו לא אמין החתיכה נעשית נבלה. ומצטרף כל הגדרה לבטל האיסור. מכל מקום יש להחמיר, here it is, יש להחמיר לאסור אותה החתיכה. In other words, what do we say? If the piece of meat, let's say right now, is sitting halfway in the rotev, what did we say before according to the Ri? Remember it's a machlokes Rashi in the Ri here. And does it make a difference if something is halfway in the rotev or not? According to Rashi, it does not make a difference. Even if it's halfway in the rotev, it could be, it's like it's outside the sauce. The Ri says, no, once it's halfway in, it's a good thing because now it could use all the help in the gedera to mevatel the isur. Halfway in, it's like it's completely in. It's a good thing. I mean, the Ri, at least in some ways, is makel. There can be a chumrah, even according to the Ri. There can come out a chumrah scenario. But here, what we're saying is that the Ramah wants to be metzaref, wants to say like this, yes, I told you chanan applies to shar isurim. But you know what? If there's no isur davuk here, it's just a regular piece of meat, it's halfway inside the rotev, then what? I'm going to tell you that I have who to rely on to allow the entire kedera to be calculated against the isur and not against the whole piece. Just the isur. In other words, I won't say chanan on that piece because it's halfway inside. And who do I have to rely on to say that? Because there is a Ri who says halfway inside means I can combine the whole kedera. Plus, there is a Rabbeinu Ephraim anyway that says there's no chanan b'shar isurim.
But does Rashi say there's chanan b'shar?
It's not necessary to do with Rashi here.
Exactly.
No, he uses two.
No, so what I'm saying is, when the Ramah is commenting on the piece halfway inside, he's not agreeing necessarily with. He might hold like Rashi that you need 60 against 60, and the puck will not help the piece.
Right.
But the chumrah of calling it Hanan b'shar Yisurim, that's
helping him a lot.
That's where he says that chumrah he's not going to apply, and with respect to that, that has nothing to do with Rashi because Rashi doesn't necessarily hold the Hanan b'shar. I don't know if he does.
No, yeah. But nevertheless, you have two shittas to rely on. Not to have to require 60 negdera against the whole piece. You can just need 60 against the isur. However, here comes the compromise. I was saying he makes a compromise. Says, I allow you to use the whole gedera against the isur, and that piece does not become chanan because it's halfway in the water. But that chaticha mekol makom yesh lachmir lesor otah chaticha. That piece you can't have.
There he goes like Rashi.
Exactly. There he doesn't want to just rely. Doesn't rely on the Ri on that. Right. He relies on the. In some ways, he relies on the Ri. Some ways, not to say chanan, not to say chanan.
Step, he doesn't go.
Right. That's all. So this is what I meant by a compromise here. On the one hand, it appears that he allows the whole kedera to be mevatel just the isur, no chanan. No, but that piece remains also. If you go according to the Ri completely, that piece is also mutter.
Right. You know what?
Right?
You could say it the other way around, exactly.
Yeah.
You could say it directly the other way around.
Right.
You could say that he goes with Rashi with respect to the 60, with respect to the being halfway inside.
Right.
But where even the Re agrees that it's going to, the 60 won't help. That's when the piece sticking out completely. So there the Re agrees with Rashi.
Completely, yes.
So there the Ramah then says, if the Re already agrees with Rashi, then I have Hanan.
Yeah, but that's if the piece is outside completely.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When does the Ramah say the piece becomes Hanan? When it's outside completely.
Right.
What situation do we have there? Re agrees with Rashi with respect to 60.
Yes.
Here, so the other Ramah says, if even the Re already agrees
Right.
with Rashi,
Yes.
so then I'll call it Hanan.
That's very good. That's true. B'chol zeh b'shar isurim, all of this is in other isurim. Ava bebasa b'chalav, I have some news to tell you, the Ramah says. No luck. No luck. Afal pi she'in ha'isur davok, even though the isur is not davok, I'm not going to let you get away with this one. Mixas ha'chaticha could be toich ha'roitev, and the piece could be inside the roitev. Amrinu chaticha nasas nebela. I'm going to have to say, because in here, I don't have any more chanan b'shar isurim. Right? If it's basar b'chalav, it's basar b'chalav. Everybody agrees chanan. So I no longer have the tziruf of the heter of relying on those that say chanan b'shar yisurim. There's no chanan b'shar yisurim. So you follow me? So if it's a scenario of basar b'chalav sticking in halfways, he says here I'm not gonna be meiko. I'm gonna say chanan, and you need 60 against the whole piece, even though it's halfway inside the roitev. I'm going to be machmir in this one. It's basar b'chalav, even though the isur is not davuk, which is interesting. Even though the isur is not davuk.
No, but the mechaber is not machmir in that case.
Right. Yeah. He's not. Just the Ramah is. Very good. Yeah, good point. The mechaber is not. Yeah. Okay. There is a chokhmah sodom. This is important to know. I mean, even though the Ramah makes it very clear, there is a chokhmah sodom that says behefsed meruba. If it's a big loss, a little bit of milk spilled on a piece of meat, and there's no shishim in that piece of meat against the cholov, and it's going to be a chanan, and I don't have shishim connected that piece of meat. I mean, it's going to be a big hefsed. The chokhmah sodom. It's good to remember this chokhmah sodom says that in a hefsed meruba you can be soymech, you can rely on the ri, even in basar b'chalav. And even this piece is mutter.
But why would the Chachmas Amrim go all the way to the Re? Let him.
No, based on that, yeah, you're right. Based on that shita, that the Re says the whole thing is mitzaref, the whole thing in the there if it's halfway in. Yeah. Important to know. I mean, sometimes you're analyzing and say, oh no, what am I going to do now? Well, it depends. If it's a small piece, if it's a little bit, you throw it out, or if it's a big hefset. And I don't recall, did we go through all the details of what's hefset, what's considered a hefset? There's a hefset muad, there's a hefset meruba, the tzorach seuda. Yeah. There are
systematically.
We mentioned it a little bit. What is considered a hefset? What was considered a hefset meruba back then? And what is a hefset meruba today? A hefset is a hefset. It could be if it's a big loss. The tzorach seuda. It could make a difference. So it's good to know that even though the Ramah says we're machmir basar b'chalav, if it's a hefsed, you have who to rely on. Okay. Then the Ramah goes on to say, Yesh oimrim delo amrinan chaticha nases nevela im nisarev isur lach beheter lach. ואחר כך נסערב הכל בהיתר אחר. והן צריכים רק שישים נגד האיסור שנופל. Okay, so he brings it, there's some who say that if liquid got mixed with liquid, and it became asur, and then it all fell into beheter acher, you don't need shishim keneged the whole thing, you only need shishim neged ha'isur shenofal. So that's the question of, is there chanan belach belach? My big machlekes rishonim. It's mashma from Toysus and the Rosh. That's the way it's understood. The one who says Chanan b'shar isurim says that it applies across the board. It applies in lach belach too. That's what it's mashma. In other words, he doesn't differentiate. It appears that he also says that everywhere else, lach belach. But if you look clearly in the Mordechai, the Rashba, the Ran, and others, they actually take apart this whole union of lach belach, and they said no. Chanan bechlal does not apply. It's not shayach. The whole concept does not apply to lach belach. And what's interesting is that each one gives a different explanation, and sometimes when you have different explanations, you have nafkaminas. You have, well, it depends. In this scenario, it depends what the reasoning was. So it's good to it's very interesting to go through the hesberim, the explanations as to why they say Chanan does not apply belach belach. The Mordechai, the famous, I think Mordechai is the one that's quoted the most, I think, by the majority of the Achronim at least. The Mordechai says like this: Din Chanan only applies because mishum chashivut hachaticha, because of the importance of the chaticha that has the isur, and that isur is isur nikar, umuvdal, and separated. On that they were goizer chanan b'shar isurim. In other words, you can identify the piece. That piece is apart from the rest. It's identifiable. On that they were goizer chanan. In other words, what does it mean goizer chanan? That the heter that you add later on will not be mevatel the isur. You would need much more heter to be mevatel the whole piece. On that there is a gzera. So basically, what is the Mordechai saying? The Mordechai says that this whole concept of chanan has to do with the chashivus, the importance of a piece that is identifiable and is apart from the rest of the gdera. The Rashba writes down b'shem the Raavad that the reason chanan applies in regular situations, not in lach, is because it gives a tam, it gives a flavor in the chaticha. And this particular chaticha where it gives off tam to, does not leave it. It stays there. As we explained by Efshal Esoichto, that it does not completely leave it. So therefore, since the tam was absorbed in this original chaticha, and there will always be some tam there that will never leave it, that is why they were goizer in it. In other words, that this tam of the Isur does not exactly go and mix itself with the other chatichas, but remains, or part of it remains in the original chaticha. So therefore, they were goizer that this chaticha should remain like an avela, because the tam is there. However, he continues on to explain, but if you were to be dealing with yain nesach, if you were to be dealing with liquids, then what do you have? Yain, for example, nesach that was mixed with yain heter, became asur, and then you had it fall into water. By the time it falls into water, it can be all diluted. In other words, it is possible for it to dissipate. As opposed to the solid, the piece of solid before that absorbed the tam, we said the tam is always there. On that they were goizer, but not on a situation where really the tam can scatter, can spread, can dissipate. On that they were not goizer, to say chanan. Because there the isur it's completely me'urav, it's completely mixed. Even though I think they're very similar in some ways. If you look, I think the Beis Yosef says that the hesberim are somewhat similar, but there is a nafkamina. Depending on how you learn the hesberim, there will be a nafkamina between the two. A very important nafkamina between these two ways of understanding lach belach would be, let's say you had a piece of meat that became chanan, and eventually when it was recooked again, nimoach, it completely liquefied. Is that the right way of saying it in English? A solid liquefies? Nimoach, nivlal. Right? So that solid is becoming liquid. So according to the Rashba, it's gone. According to the first explanation of the Mordechai, no. It became asur, the chashivas, maybe it's still there. In other words, maybe we don't say that you can cancel that. You can cancel the chashivut. Once it became asur, because of the reasons we gave, it retains the isur. But if you say that the Rashi says the whole reason is because by solid there's something there but by liquids there's nothing there. It's all mixed. Well, here too, it was a solid, but it became eventually liquefied. It may make a difference. That this, even though it started off as a solid, now that it liquefied, maybe it would be okay. The Ran brings another reason. The Ran says that the whole idea of Hanan, B'shar Yisurim, that is Otu. Remember, it's Otu Basar B'cholov. That was the reason why they were Geyser in other Yisurim, is Atu. In other words, it's because we're concerned about making a mistake in the real Yisur, Basar B'cholov. So we're Geyser here, Otu Basar B'cholov. In other words, because of Basar B'cholov, because of our concerns of making a mistake in the real Yisur. So if that's the case, the Ran says, if the whole Gzera is that it's like Basar B'cholov, then it has to be like Basar B'cholov. Meaning what? That they both have to be things that are cooked together. But not by just mixing liquids. Here, what's not so clear to me, and the Poskim can speak about it, does it make a difference if it's in heat or not in heat? Are we talking about liquids that were mixed together through heat, or is it only mixed even without heat? It doesn't appear that there should be a difference, because liquid is liquid. But the way the Ran explains it raises this question, because he says it has to be, you're going to be geyser like Basar B'cholov, then let it be like Basar B'cholov completely. What's Basar B'cholov? Cooking. Bishul. So therefore, if you just mix the liquids together, there's no bishul, it's not like Basar B'cholov, there's no gzera on that. Beis Yosef actually, if you look at the Beis Yosef, talks about it, and he brings also the Ogur, another shita, that you don't say Hanan only in a Isur Bolua Baheter, and not when the Isur is Me'urav Baheter. Only when the Isur was absorbed into the Heter, but not if it's mixed. Taaruvot, a mixture of Isur and Heter, that you don't say Hanan. Hanan, we decreed Hanan, B'shar Yisurim, in a situation where it's Balua in the Heter. It's actually was absorbed, but not if it's all mixed together. That is another similar idea to what we said before, but there could be a nafkamina. So what do? Yesh lismoch al zeh, the Ramah says, b'shar yisurim, you can rely on this shita, that there's no Hanan in shar yisurim, b'shar yisurim, letzorech hefsid godol. Aval lo b'basar b'cholov. So here he wants to say that, regardless of the reasons right now, that you could rely on all these poskim who say there's no Hanan Ishar in the Surim, belach, but not bebasar b'cholov. The Shach also says the same thing, behefsed godol. Huh? Yeah, only hefsed godol they say, which is interesting. Only behefsed godol, but not bebasar b'cholov.
What is the difference?
That's pretty much the same. Hefsed meruba, called Hefsed Gadol.
You use two different.
Right. Sometimes it's called Hefsed Gadol, and sometimes it's called Hefsed Meruba. But I think for the most part they're the same. The only time you see differences is they'll say Hefsed Mu'at, a small Hefsed, or they'll say Hefsed Gadol v'letzorech Seuda, or Seudat Mitzvah. That there is also a tremendous. This is going for a chasana. It's not just a Hefsed. It's also for a big major event. What are we going to do? Imagine the caterer has a problem now.
For guests in his house.
Yeah.
It's not
well, his loss depends on the hefsed. The hefsed meruba is a tremendous loss in the value. In other words, it's not just a chicken, even though some may say chicken is a big hefsed. The value. Yeah, not just the quantity. No. Yeah.
Is there some quantification with your financial status?
Right. Remind me to see what the scale is. I intended to check. I really intended to, and I just didn't get around to it. But they do bring down more or less a scale. And the scales have varied from time to time. Back then, years ago, to what it is right now. And there is some flexibility in the scale. Some are more lenient with the hefsed meruba. The hefsed meruba doesn't have to be thousands of dollars. It depends on the individual too. There's a klal, which is a famous klal, that Torah chasa al mamonam shel Yisrael. The Torah was very concerned about a monetary loss, and of course, whenever it meant this is the entire livelihood of the poor man bringing the cow to check out is this treif or not, They looked for every possible leniency. That's why in Hilchos Shchita, which B'ezrat Hashem will get to, hopefully, the Ramah is more lenient than the Machaber. The Machaber says, no, halak. Everything has to be glatt, perfect. I don't allow for any little sirchot, any ligatures or what? Ligaments? Ilan or ligatures?
No,
not ligaments. Ligatures, yeah. Ligaments is something else. Anyway, so there's a difference in Hilchos Treifas between halak, which is glatt, the word glatt in Yiddish, right, and kosher. And what's that kosher? B'di'evet, or behefsed. The Ramah tells you just can't say it's kosher. I mean, I have different grades, of kashrut. And you wonder to yourself, whenever you go, if whoever learns that sugya, wait a minute, is it kosher or not? and there are times the halacha provides for one thing and sometimes for another thing, depending on the circumstances. Because, if this is the only cow, if you say this is it's treif, it's a tremendous loss for the man. Is there any way to be makel, to be lenient? And there sometimes are times, So a hefsed meruba ordinary just means that it will be stressful. If I can borrow that word, it will be quite a stressful thing for a person to have to throw away, start from scratch, spend more money, something significant, yeah.
Not a question then of more time, let's say, when you're having to cook.
It's not just the time, no. It's not just the time, no, it's the cost. It's the cost, yeah. The cost and the immediate, and possibly sometimes the immediate need, if it's the tzorach seuda, yeah. Anyway, so we have the Shach telling us that you can be lenient, belach hanan b'shar yisurim behefsed, l'tzorach hefsed. Before we go on with the Ramah, I want maybe let's go over a few examples of lach belach. It's not so simple. What does lach belach mean? It's not just liquids. I mean, the typical lach belach is, of course, mashke b'mashke. You have lach belach, you have liquid with liquid. But you could also have an iser gush, a solid piece of iser. Okay, a solid piece of iser that fell into lach and was cooked in it. Of course, you take it out later. This whole lach that's in the Gdera is lach belach. The lach of the tam of the iser in the lach of the Gdera. You would think for a moment, wait a minute, that's also lach belach? Yes, that's also lach belach. Even though it's gush, chatichat gush, it's a piece of solid of iser falling into this sauce, this liquid. Yeah, but obviously you're taking out the piece, right? This whole lach inside here is lach belach. That's also lach belach. We don't say the whole thing becomes chanan now, just because it absorbed so much iser tam. There was no shishim against the piece, right? It is usr. I mean, obviously, if there's no shishim, it's going to be, you can't have it because of the tam, but it's not chanan. That now you will need shishim against the whole thing if this were to fall again, or if this were to be used again. With this, I just thought this could be, where this could be applicable with oil. Deep frying. With deep fry oil, you sometimes reuse the same oil for a number of times. That would be a good example, perhaps. You deep fried something treif. You took it out, of course. Isn't that a good example? Deep frying. Oil. Otherwise, it's not just soup. Why would you reuse the soup? It could be right? So maybe that would be an example of, even though the gush iser fell in, and you had it emitted tam, it doesn't make the whole sauce chanan. Or the blia in a kli, also. It was the kli was treif, okay? And you cooked something, liquid in there. It absorbed the tam of the kli. It's still lach belach. The example that we gave of an iser that fell in, but it was nimuach, it liquefied, that would depend on the machloket between the Rashba and the Mordechai. In that example, we would have a machloket perhaps. Is that lach belach or not? Because now it is, but it started out being usr. And here is an interesting example. What happens if you had some iser fall into... Now for this you have to know Yiddish. Depending which, Yiddish, real Yiddish is 90% Old German, 6% Hebrew, and 4% Slavic. That's more or less approximately the composition of real Yiddish. I say real because a lot of people here today don't speak real Yiddish. They mix American English or other languages into it. Now this Yiddish, even the real Yiddish, varies from country to country slightly. Yiddish spoken in Germany is more Germanized. Yiddish spoken in Poland has Polish Slavic words. Yiddish spoken in Russia has Russian Slavic words, right? And depending where you're from, they have more or less of the German. Now, one example where you can see this is with preserves. I think in English it's called preserves. Shimurim. Preservatives it's called, yeah.
Preservatives,
jam. Jam. Right.
Legally.
Yeah, you're legally, yeah. But which one is it? Preserves, all right.
The British call preserves.
Preserves, yeah. In Lithuanian countries, and I think also in the Galicia countries, no, not all of Galicia, depends if it's Eastern or Western Galicia, the preserves is called Eingemachts.
Yes.
And in the more Moldova area, Russia, Ukraine, it's called povedo, which is a Slavic word, Ukrainian origin, Polish, whatever it is. So you've heard of this? Is it also used in present day German, Ilan?
The word Eingemacht is certain.
Yeah.
Would you call that is pickled? It's something that's pickled.
Pickled is pickled. Yeah, pickled or yeah, and yeah, chamutzim also. Yeah, but they use it also to describe anything that is made with either pickled or whatever. So there's a question in Halacha. I think the Pri Megadim brings it. There's a question in Pri Megadim. You have Isser falling into jam, into riba, into povedo. He says I think he uses the word povedo in his example. What is that lach belach? That's the question. It's jam, because in some ways, it's a gush mutzak. It's a solid piece. There's even a question I saw actually somebody bring down. What happens if you had a liquid that eventually solidified? What? When it was in a liquid state.
It still wasn't a liquid.
A liquid state. Have you ever eaten something called galer or picha? No.
That's Hungarian.
Yeah. That's they put feet of cows into. They cook it and you get this broth that solidifies, and they add garlic and pepper to it. It's actually very tasty. Yeah. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, just like from the jelly from fish or from chicken, also solidifies. So there's a question interesting about things changing their composition. But here the question was, I think the Pri Megadim, if I recall, it was the Pri Megadim that brought down that example of what happens with Isser falling onto, as we would call in Hebrew today, riba, right, into jam. So I think the Pri Megadim says it's called lach belach. He says it's still called lach belach, even though it's not exactly as solid. It's still called lach belach as far as we're concerned. Another example, however, that's a little bit more of a she'elah, more of a question mark, is you have dough that you made into dough. I guess you call flour. You made into a dough, and you mix the dough with eggs, and one of the eggs had blood on it. Is that mixture now called lach belach or not? Because in some ways the dough is yavish, but on the other hand it's all mixed, and it's not really being absorbed. It's not isu balua like the Ogur says. We just said before that the Ogur explains that it has to be actually absorbed into something. Here it never really becomes absorbed per se. It's all mixed at all times. So I think the Chochmas Sodom brings down that example. And he says it's a lach belach. It still would be a lach belach. Not everybody may agree with that, but that's still a lach belach. So here you have examples of where it's not liquid, and it's still called lach belach. But important to remember that what Ramah said that by Basar b'chalav we will always say Hanan even by lach belach. All right, what about Melicha? This is an interesting one. In Melicha, when it comes to Hanan, salting, salt is powerful, we explained, and salt asers. And we explained that salt especially can be a problem when you have something fatty. We're machmer. The Ramah is machmer. Now, but in reality, so the question is, are we going to say Hanan b'Melicha? Okay, you said it's aser. The whole thing is aser because it's salted. The salt made the whole thing, you salted Isser and Heter. But are we going to say that this salt which made this piece of meat usher because of the salt, did it make it also chanan? You follow the question? Good question. So the answer is, not really. We're not going to be machmir. Why? Because we have a very important rishon in Hilchas Melicha. His name is the Ramban. That he says Melicha is also kedei klipa, no matter what. Okay. So we can be metzaref the shita of the Ramban by Melicha, and I think the Achronim say only behefsa meruba. You have several chickens, several pieces of meat, or whatever. To be metzaref the shita of the Ramban that the Melicha would only went as far as the klipa, and say that it's not chanan. In other words, we metzaref that shita with the shita that there's no chanan b'shar isurim, right? We're combining here shitas. It's not just that it goes. It's not just the Ramban. It's also that there's no chanan b'shar isurim according to Rabbeinu Ephraim. So therefore, the Hefsem Merubah we can use that. What's interesting is that what do we do by Basar b'chalav b'Melicha? Are we still going to be lenient? Machlokes Pri Megadim Chochmas Sodom. I found out. Pri Megadim says Basar b'chalav Melicha. No. It's Basar b'chalav. We're not going to be makel in Basar b'chalav. Even Hefsem Merubah. And the Chochmas Sodom says Behefsem Merubah it's okay. In other words, it's only Melicha. I mean, you have the Ramban, you have other that hold that there's no Chanan b'Shar Yisurim. So even if it's Basar b'chalav, now why? The question is, why should we be machmir in Melicha b'Basar b'chalav? Lemaisa, it's only midaraisa. It's only bishul, right? I mean, the whole issue of Basar b'chalav really midaraisa applies only in a situation of bishul. So why should I didn't look through the whole Pri Megadim as to why he's machmir. The Maisa, I see he's machmir. But Hefsem Meruba to be machmir b'Basar b'chalav b'Hilchas Melicha.
Is he machmir in heat that is not bishul?
Well,
is machmir here?
Obviously.
How about sleep?
Sleep or with smoking or with any of the other things that we talked about.
I didn't see if he mentions that. It's a good question. But I would assume yes. Because remember, by tzli, we also have the chumrah of the Ramah that we're not bekim between kachush and shaman. So even though me'ikar adin, it's only kedei netila, we're still stuck with that. We're not bekim, and we're not bekim means the whole thing becomes asur. And if the whole thing becomes asur, it's not less than melicha. The what?
If he's strict in this,
yeah.
he's strict in the others.
Right. Yeah, here he seems to be strict in Melicha. Yeah. So, I guess, because it's Basar b'chalav, the Ikar Adin of Basar b'chalav is a Deraisa, so he doesn't want to be Metzar of the other Heterim. There was...
Chanan b'Basar b'chalav is the right?
Yes.
You have to say that.
Right. Yeah. The only thing is,
No, but the funny thing is, since if you combine milk and without proper dishon, the oraisa there is sir.
Right.
So why would you say on something on a combination that the oraisa and aser that a din of hanan within the oraisa isser applies on it? So that hanan can only the Pri Megadim's hanan can only be the rosh.
No chinami, yeah, because remember we did say that those who hold hanan. Those who have a question about Chanan b'Shar Yisurim, there are machmir Chanan b'Basar b'chalav d'Rabbanan. There are some who would, I think, right? Didn't we say that before? Maybe we spoke about it last time. What would be the din of Basar b'chalav d'Rabbanan? Would there be Chanan and Basar b'chalav d'Rabbanan?
You mean by kitchen cooked?
Yeah.
Or chaya doesn't look
Yeah. Because we've said that.
No,
because I thought we had the Rambam with chicken. Yeah.
Chicken cooked in milk is hanan?
No, would it be a problem?
Well, a problem.
That we have, I wrote it down here. The Chanan b'Rabbanan. Let's see here. We have the Rash with the Isur Beheta that even in a Derabanan we say Chanan, the Shach. The Rambam says that his example of chicken and milk says there's no Chanan and you can actually add more chicken to be mevatel the milk. And the Pri Chodesh says that the Rambam would hold that even in Basar b'chalav d'Rabbanan. That's what it was. The Pri Chodesh says that the Rambam would also say that in a Basar b'chalav d'Rabbanan situation. But I think everybody else would not. That even if I remember seeing something. Even if it's a Basar b'chalav d'Rabbanan, even if it's a D'Rabbanan, there would be machmir even though
Will be machmir with what?
to legabe Hanan.
But you said the Chochmas Adam is not machmir with salt.
With salting, not.
Yeah.
Right, they have some meruba.
Is that the
No, but here we're talking about Hanan b'derabanan, b'isure derabanan. So that,
no, so we're talking about the Isser Basar b'chalav with salting.
exactly, that was my question. So
you see the Chochmas Adam says it's not a Hanan.
they have some meruba, right? He says it's mutter.
It's not, mutter is something else, but it's not Hanan.
No, it's not Hanan, right. It wouldn't be Hanan. It would, of course not. One second. What do you mean it wouldn't be Hanan? It would be Asr.
In other words, if you didn't have in the 60 against the milk, you wouldn't have to have in the pot 60 against the milk. It's sufficient to have 60 against the milk that was salted together with the milk.
No, 1 second. No, that's the whole question.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. According to the Chochmas
according to the ones who are Mekel,
yes,
you would still need a Keneged the Klipa. You would still have some Isser, right? The question was according to the ones who are not Mekel but Melicha. Would they be? In other words, do they differentiate between Basar b'chalav and others? So apparently there is a differentiation between. No, there is a differentiation between Shari Surim versus Basar b'chalav. By Shari Surim, we're Mekel behefsed meruba to say we have the Ramban Kedei Klipa, plus we have the sheet is the whole. There's no Hanan b'Shari Surim. But the Basar, my question wasn't Basar b'chalav. The Pri Megadim says that by Basar b'chalav we would not Mekel to say that there's no Hanan.
The Basar b'chalav would be Mekel on what certain?
By Melicha.
By Melicha, exactly.
Right.
So now we're back to Melicha.
Right. So my question was, I was thinking, why would he be machmir so much if it's Melicha? If it's not Bishul, it's Melicha. So the whole thing is at the Rabbanon.
So it would be the Rabbanon.
Right. So that would be an example maybe of just like the other ones, of Hanan be'isura de Rabbanon. That the Rashba and the Shach hold that we do say Hanan be'isura de Rabbanon. Okay, it's something to think about. Why would he be more machmir? Even in the Hefsed Meruba, be'isura de Rabbanon, say Hanan.
The difference that I think they're thinking of,
yeah,
I understand, is when everyone is saying that you have Siddur Rabbanon,
right.
They're talking about proper cooking, but cooking something with milk that the Torah didn't usher.
Okay.
Kaya,
right.
chicken,
right.
But proper cooking.
Right.
So that's an Siddur Rabbanon.
Okay.
Here we're talking about, where we are talking about milk and actual meat.
Right.
With the combination that the Torah did usher.
Right.
But the method used to combine them
right.
is only the Rabbanon. And
right.
the Torah didn't usher that method of combination.
Right.
So that's the difference I think that you're making in the two types of Rabbanon.
In other words, there appears to be some difference between the two, because we've seen that whenever it's the real Isser, like you pointed out, or a real Basar and real Chalav, it appears to be stricter than having just a plain Yisur D'Rabbanan. I'll give you an example. There's a halacha that there's no Hanan and Bishul Akum. Interesting question, no? Bishul Akum. You know what Bishul Akum, right? A goy cooked it. So it's also, it got mixed in. There's no Hanan. Why? Because the whole thing is Batal Beroiv anyway. We're not Machmer on Bishul Akum that much. So if there's no problem over there of Shishim and the like, there's no Hanan either. Hanan does not apply to those kinds of Yisur D'Rabbanan, Paspalter, Bishul Akum, those that are very, very, very D'Rabbanan. It's not even, here it's an Otu D'Oraisa. It's like you said, there is a difference. So maybe because of that, the Pri Megadim says this is the real Basar B'chalav. We need to be Machmir, even though the method is not Bishul, versus what the Rashba and the Ran and the Shach are talking about is just Isurei D'Rabbanan themselves.
But the method of creation is
Bishul, yeah. So it could be that there is some difference. Why he's being more machmir, even behefse meruba, because maybe it's the real Basar b'chalav. So we're not going to be mekel on that. Okay, could be, yeah. Anyway, that's what I just thought I would.
But it would be a Hanan D'Rabbanan by him.
It would still be a Hanan D'Rabbanan there, yeah. All right, the last item here in the Ramah, im nisarev yovesh b'yovesh, if it's all yovesh b'yovesh, lo amrinan yovesh b'yovesh lo amrinan b'shum isur chaticha nas levela. Even if it's basar b'chalav, if it's all dry, nothing happened, no cooking, no liquids.
Well, quick question.
Yeah.
So if we have a klipper of the Pri Megadim, let's call it Hanan, and we're saying it's Hanan D'Rabbanan.
I think so, yeah.
And we have a machloikus.
Right.
So don't we say that whenever we have a machloikus, take an Siddur Rabbanan, then...
Well, we can have a suffix there, Rabbanan. That we say, if it's a suffix Hanan, we mentioned suffix Hanan, it's not a Hanan. Right. If it's a suffix Hanan, in most cases it would not be a Hanan.
Proper bishul, suffix Hanan would...
If it was a proper bishul, yeah.
Proper bishul
with the Basar B'chalav. Yeah, sure, because it's a release of the Raisa, it's a suffix the Raisa. Right. Very good. The last, so if it's Yavesh b'Yavesh, there's no problem. There's no Chaticha Nasa, nothing is really mixed. And the last point he brings out, Ve'ayin lekamon sim tzadik tesif cont tesvov midin Chaticha Nasa nevila, regarding a situation of Kli. Hanesa miblias Isur, if a Kli became asu mibliat Isur from absorbing an Isur, lon amrina bechaticha nasas nevela, you don't say on the Kli that it becomes a Hanan, velo ba'inu shishim rak neged ha'Isur balua, only against the Isur balua. So what does he mean? So real briefly, regarding this whole area of Hanan in Kalim, the majority of the poskim hold that most Kalim, most material, cannot become Hanan. Does not become Hanan. It just doesn't become Hanan.
If I remember correctly,
Kli Cheres is the one exception, where you find a little bit of a discussion. If it's earthenware, you find a Machloikas. The Ramah holds basically like the Mordechai, that he brings down there in Taaruvot, that Kli Cheres can become Hanan. There is that possibility. What's interesting in this Ramah is that the Shach says, I read that Mordechai and I didn't understand that. I understood the opposite. That's a very interesting machloikis in the Ramah and the Shach. They're both telling different things as to what the Mordechai says. But anyway, the Ramah learns that the Mordechai holds that a Kli Cheres can become Hanan. Why? Because Cheres is unique, that you cannot be mafrid. You cannot separate completely ever the Isser. That's why you can't make a gola to it. Yeah, you inherited a beautiful Limoges. You know what Limoges is? China. Expensive China from some relative that was not from Dinkim. Can I use it now? Basar b'chalav, question is earthenware. So there's a whole heter of 12 months in earthenware, But anyway, we won't get into that right now. You may have some sort of heter. But basically, Cheres absorbs and doesn't let go completely. So since you cannot remove it completely, right, the time that is Balua there, it can become Hanan. In Taaruvot, he brings this b'shem yeshoimrim, that there is such an opinion that holds. The Shach there disagrees, and he holds that even the Mordechai would not say that the Kli becomes Hanan. If anything, he says the question only relates to the bliot, only to the blias, to that which was absorbed. They can become Hanan, but don't ever tell me that the whole pottery, the whole chart or whatever you want to call it, the whole vessel becomes Hanan. That's already too much. On that there is a machlokes. If the Belias become Hanan, that there is a machlokes.
The Belia, by the way, we're not talking about mamashis, that just taste.
Just taste, yeah. Yeah, there are Rishonim that hold that the Belias become Hanan, and the Ramban is one of those that says no, the Belias do not become Hanan. We will see this more in Sif Hey, the coming Seif. That's where this will make a difference. Tipas chalosh shenaflu ala k'deira. That is where we will see what we just learned in the Ramah. What is really the problem? Is the problem with the blias, or could the actual vessel be a problem? The Ramah Maisa holds that the Kli does not become Hanan, and the Gra explains over here that he only means the Kli. The Gra explains that the Ramah only means that the Kli does not become a Kli in Hanan, but that the Ramah would hold, like the Rishonim, that there is Hanan on the Blias. There's another discussion, a very big discussion, I don't know if we'll ever have time to go through it right now, between the Taz and the Shach, maybe briefly another time, whether there's Hanan on the Isur of Mashahu. If something became Asur because of a Mashu, like Chametz and Pesach, could it become Hanan? In other words, of course you need Shishim. In other words, the whole piece becomes Asur because it's Asur b'Mashu, regardless of how big it is. But could that Mashu now affect others b'Mashu? The Taz says we don't say Trei Mashu, you don't say two Mashu. The Shach says that it all depends if it's Min b'Min or Min b'She'en or Min. Chametz b'Pesach is different than other Isurim. Obviously, I think the majority of folks can rely on the Taz, and you don't say that across the board. You don't just say that everywhere. That something that became Asur b'Mashu can also apply that Mashu to other Isurim. That's already taking it too far. we were asked b'mashu the first time around, but to say chanan through a mashu to other heterim, no. The first time something can become masur afilu b'mashu, but it doesn't mean that now, if you get mixed up again, it will require again. So that's a whole discussion on how that works and whether it applies or not. But these are all isur d'Rabbanan anyway. Isur mashu is an isur d'Rabbanan, unless of course, like you hold like Rabbi Yehuda, we hold like the Chachamim, the famous machlekes, right? Min b'mino is asur b'mashu, or it's batul b'rayv. The only reason we require shishim is because it's being cooked and there is tam. But otherwise, min b'mino, we're lenient. So we don't really have this problem of isur mashu except on Pesach. And of course, in the Zohar and other situations where mashu still applies.
60 by min b'mino is to...
No, I'm saying Rabbi Yehuda.
Yeah.
Machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, min b'minoi. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's batul b'roy.
We hold that it's batul b'roy.
Right. I mean, right. 60, not because of tam, but because of...
right, not because of tam, right. So there are other situations, of course, where the Isser is mashu, like davar sheish lo matirin, which are also not gzer necessarily, but it's also a din of derabanan.
Is this derabanan actually?
Chatika real iskabet, right?
60 by mino derabanan, is that also?
No, that was Rabbi Yehuda. That was only Rabbi Yehuda. We don't hold like we passing like the Chachamim, and therefore midin Torah it would be batul b'roiv.
That the Rabbanan requires 60 after all.
After all, when you're cooking it.
Atu?
Yes, atu. Yeah. Because of the tam.
It's the same tam.
No, when you're cooking it. Only when you're cooking it. Only because of the problem of tam.
Meat, it's the same tam.
Right, so it's atu, like you said.
So it's atu.
Yeah. Because of the tam, it's atu. That's what requires shishim. All right, well, this is, I guess, what we'll stop. We'll continue with Sifei next time.